I'm Glenn McGinnis, and this is Outburst. On the program, do you agree with a ban on cell phones in the classroom?
I feel like there's no point for kids to have them there.
Major distraction. I mean, for everybody.
I mean, I don't expect my kids to take their phones to school either, so.
I think that in certain cases they are useful and should be used.
A province-wide approach by the Ontario government to ban cell phones in the classroom hopes to prevent distractions while in the classroom, as well as helping students concentrate on their work. This September, students in Ontario will be required to leave their phones on silent and hidden from view. Any violators will have their device taken away from them. But this plan has drawn criticism from some teachers who feel the ban will put added stress and expectations on them to enforce it. So we took to the streets to see what you think about this. Our question: do you agree with a ban on cell phones in the classroom?
I believe in a restricted use of cell phones in the classroom. They are a distraction. Like everything else, it depends on what grade you're in, it depends on what it's being used for, and it becomes very difficult, I believe, for a teacher to control that. It's just a lot easier to say, here's the time you can do it, and control that access to it.
If they were to use it like they would use a laptop, say, for Googling information or what have you, that I can get. But if they're texting or otherwise disrupting the class, the education, yes.
Yes, I do generally. There is the exception when it's used for instruction or emergency, so yes.
Absolutely. Totally. Major distraction. I mean, for everybody. I mean, you see parents and kids in restaurants, nobody's talking to each other. They're all just on their phone or their tablet. It's, again, it's a tool. If it's used properly, it's effective, but it also can go against, what it's meant for. So yeah, schools definitely, for sure. Maybe even restaurants, so people can be, talk to one another again. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Well, I think you should be able to contact people. Maybe if there's an emergency, somebody reaches out to you, you should be able to answer your phone. Calculators, things like that. Yeah, I just don't think you should be wasting your time on your cell phone in the classroom, but. I don't think taking it from people or banning it will help any issues.
I'm not too sure. I grew up with in my school cell phones were banned, and then I also was teaching in a school where cell phones were used as an educational tool. But I know that there is a growing concern recently over the use of cell phones. And I have to agree with the teachers that it is creating a lot of hassle and a lot of problems in the school. And I think we should listen to our educators on what they think is best.
But teachers and school administrators, how are they going to man that? And it's going to take a lot of time and energy and perhaps lessening the focus on teaching and curriculum and so forth, which is why we're there. You would need to have parental support, absolutely, because when you're dealing with younger children or teenagers, and what do you do when a child won't hand off his phone, right? And so what are the bigger issues that are going to come into play around behavior, discipline, and the management of cell phone usage in classrooms? And that's going to be a difficult thing that falls on the schools.
Yes, I do. I feel like there's no point for kids to have them there. We used to have calculators and all that kind of stuff, so I don't really see why you need it if you provide the necessary tools for research, books, other technology, but with a monitored environment, I guess. So yeah, no.
Yeah, I do.
Why?
Well, I think children are distracted by a lot of things these days, so if you're removing one thing that distracts them from their studies, and I think it's all for a good cause. Yeah, so I agree 100%.
I do agree with that. And just like when I was in school and the calculators started coming out that had capabilities, people have to learn. And so there is a concern to me about the, what would you call it, the diminution of education. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yes, I do. I think kids spend too much time on cell phones. I don't think it's good for them.
I think they need to learn how to deal with other children and deal with problems without just retreating to a cell phone.
Oh yes, 100%, 100%. You know, I'm 60 years old here. I grew up, you know, class should be pay attention, and you know, it's a distraction. You know, after school, whenever fine, but you're in class. I mean, you're there to learn, and so yeah, I definitely support that. I mean, I don't expect my kids to take their phones to school either. So yeah.
I don't have a lot of information on this, but I would say probably. Cell phones generally can be kind of distracting. I know most of us reach for our social media or reach for email or different things. I can imagine if you're a kid with a less developed prefrontal cortex, that probably presents a problem more than even for adults. So yeah, I think it probably makes sense.
If young people can grow up knowing how to use their cell phones responsibly and also how to walk away from them and other coping skills and ways to access information, I think that's more ideal than putting a ban on them in certain places. People will find their own times when they should and shouldn't use their devices.
I mean, cell phones, they do obviously come in handy if they pertain to the assignment. Absolutely whip them out, but I do think that they should be banned from the classroom.
I can understand where a ban on cell phones would come from. I feel like if used improperly, they could be a distraction. However, I think that in certain cases they are useful and should be used, but it definitely depends on the situation and the class.
I think that phones can be a useful device as long as they're being used for proper research and calculators. If they're being used for other things like social media, I don't know if I can agree with that. But I would say that overall, yes, I would allow it. And I think that it's good to have phones in the classroom.
Just over a year ago, the British Columbia government experimented in a pilot project with the federal government, making it legal in British Columbia for adults to possess small amounts of illegal or hard drugs. The purpose of this program was to reduce overdose deaths, cut down the stigma, and encourage those who are inflicted to seek help. But recently, British Columbia Premier David Eby did an about-face on the matter after the federal government granted his request to make the use of illegal drugs in public illegal once again, mostly because the matter got out of hand. So we took to the streets to see if this was the right call. Our question: do you agree with the BC government's decision to recriminalize use of illicit drugs in public spaces?
To a degree, yes. I agree with the legalization of marijuana. 100% agree with that. I don't think it ever should have been illegal. But I do think we have problems that have to be addressed before we just cut things wide open. And all you have to do is walk around and see what's happening with some of the fentanyl and everything else to know that things are not being handled in the way they have to be.
Yes, I do. They're illegal drugs for a reason. They don't need to be seen by my children out in public taking illegal drugs. We should be working on getting those people help they need rather than giving them drugs that they don't need.
You know, it's never going to go away. The problem is going to exist, right? But it's still criminal. Like I think that the drugs that like marijuana and stuff like that don't pose an immediate threat for your personal safety and health. It's different, but when you're talking about things that include needles and other things, absolutely, like should be illegal.
That's a tough one because if you recriminalize it, then the crime rates get higher, and back to the problem that you're trying to solve, I think, in the first place. So, in my opinion, well, it's neither here nor there. I feel like if they think that it would reduce the rates eventually, then fine. But otherwise, I don't know if statistics have proven that really it solves the problem. So neither here nor there, really.
Obviously, what was going on wasn't working. There were still people dying. There was still a lot of drug use. It did the safe places to go and use hard drugs, I'll call them, were there and available. But it didn't decrease the harm rate or even the numbers of people that did hard drugs. To my knowledge, that's how I understand that. So a second look had to be taken at what they have done in BC. But again, only time will tell which one works better.
Ooh, hard question. Yes and no. A lot of it is really bad. I've seen firsthand in BC from friends and family who've lived there, who have seen the devastation that some of the illicit drugs have caused. I think that the rehab centers and that open centers for clean use and everything are really nice additions to helping addicts get into a better headspace, get into a better mental situation, and to get better resources. At the same time, when it affects the community around you and it affects everybody in and around you, it becomes a problem at some point. And you can't do too much, but you can't do too little. It's a hard topic to chew on and a hard pill to swallow.
In general, I think that we need to be supporting people to stay healthy and be safe, no matter what they're choosing to do with their bodies. I understand that law enforcement has a place in there. I don't know what it necessarily should be.
Not really, no. I think there's lots of other options to solve problems, and again, it's a public health issue, not a criminal issue. So I think they should have dug a little bit deeper into their toolkit and looked for better ways to solve that problem.
I think that drug addiction is a mental illness, and I think that criminalization is not a suitable way to deal with that. I think there are people who need help, and there definitely should be systems in place to reduce the amount of drug use and protect citizens from the impacts of drug use. But I think that criminalizing it is just going to create a vicious cycle for a lot of users.
We lose on average 7 people a day here in British Columbia due to toxic drug poisoning. So until that number comes down, it makes no sense to fill our jails with people who are unwell.
However, I like just a couple weeks ago, I was in the library using the bathroom and someone was smoking like crack or meth in the stall like right next to me, and it's not a good feeling, especially I know like if kids are being exposed to that, you don't know what kind of harms that can do for yourself. And I think the concern is valid, but it's not solving the issue.
So it's one thing to make these bans, but you need to talk to your experts. You need to talk to the people intervening front line, and I think that there is a miss there in government at times. Whether you're talking to school administrators or you're talking to the people that run the cities, you've got to be talking to the front line.
So rather than decriminalizing it, what they should have done is they should have put more money into treatment. And get these people treated and at least give them a chance to live instead of having a chance to die, which is what they've got now. So yeah, recriminalizing is a good thing.
Yes. I think that we've in our enthusiasm to try and protect the minority, we've done it at the expense of the majority. And that's a bit of a problem. Now, I don't know what the balance is. I don't think we should be criminalizing health issues, but that's not the same as we can do leap the mountaintop and hope we've actually got it figured out. And I think in this situation, we don't have it figured out.
Well, I'm an individual that doesn't think any drugs or alcohol is a good thing. I mean, how is alcohol any different? It's legal, you can buy it, anybody can get it. It's a problem too. So, what's the answer to these problems? Again, as a person that doesn't use any of that, I'd like to see all of it gone.
The intelligence alliance comprised of the United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and Great Britain is also known as what? NATO, the Five Eyes, or CSIS? NATO, the Five Eyes, or CSIS?
I'm gonna go with the Five Eyes.
NATO, the Five Eyes, or CSIS?
Go with CSIS.
I don't know.
Go with CSIS. Go with CSIS. Go with
CSIS. CSIS.
Five Eyes.
NATO.
NATO. The Five Eyes.
NATO.
It's called the Five Eyes.
The Five Eyes.
The Five Eyes.
It's the Five Eyes.
It is the Five Eyes?
Five Eyes.
I got it.
Give me 5. The Five Eyes is an intelligence alliance composed of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. These partner countries share a broad range of intelligence with one another in one of the world's most unified multilateral arrangements. These nations collaboratively work on intelligence matters, pooling their resources and sharing sensitive information to ensure collective security and also to combat global threats. Experts warn that this year Canada could see its worst wildfire season yet, surpassing even last year. Already we've seen fires popping up in British Columbia and Alberta, and the hope is that people will not have to flee their communities or lose their homes or personal belongings. We sent our cameras out to ask people what they are doing to make sure they are ready just in case disaster strikes once again. Our question: how are you preparing for another wildfire season?
This year, I live out in the bush, so fire season was really bad to me last year. I was actually living right beside the fire. I did evacuate come time for the city to do so. This year, I intend to not, and just fire safety, fire preparedness, so pumps, hoses, do all your proofing, and just be ready for another year, because it seems like it's going to be a problem for a while to come.
Not well at all. I packed up a bug bag ready to go. Part of living up in Fire Nation is the difficulties that come with wildfires.
Mentally preparing is the big part. We're just looking at making sure we have enough supplies on hand. That's really it. Thinking about where we would go if we had to go somewhere. That's really all I'm doing at this point.
I think we've probably looked at like our emergency plan as a family, some of our emergency preparedness in terms of our house, our pets, making sure we have water and things that we could pack up easily. I think last year we did a lot of thinking about what was important to us as a family in our house and what we would take with us if we had to leave. Yeah, kind of recalibrating.
I'm preparing by denying the fact that I might have to evacuate again. No, seriously, I'm just learning from the lessons of last year by being ready. If I have to go, I have to go. I'm also deciding that probably there are some things that I'd like to do this year that I shouldn't probably rely on doing, like certain trips and so on, that if I go and I'm out on the land or out on the water and all of a sudden there's a call to evacuate, why would I put myself farther in harm's way? So just things like that.
Planning to be out of town, unfortunately. I love being here for the summers, but I plan to do a couple trips, and I plan to support the people here that will stay any way I can. I'm not sure how that'll be, but it's all just unclear.
Personally, I'm just making sure that myself and everybody that I know is informed of the current situations with the wildfires and making sure that we all have plans and ways of getting out if things end up getting worse.
I'm making sure that all my gas lines in my house are safe to use, so barbecues, making sure that everything's safe. Having a safety kit ready, so that could be like water, like non-perishable foods, just all the essentials before I leave my house, but yeah.
Wow, how am I preparing? To be honest, I'm looking to move out of Glen Rosa. I am in the fire central, okay? And I moved there after the fires. But how I'm gonna prepare this year is make sure that I have a go bag. Last year when I had to evacuate last minute, I was at work, had to rush, and I kind of just grabbed clothes and I thought it was gonna be a couple days, where I've really looked into it now and it's like, make sure you got your laptop, your ID, my birth certificate, things like that. So this year I'm preparing with my own prep list and a go bag.
Yeah, we are. You know, we live in the Castle Noma area, which is just across the bridge, and had a fire meeting with a community association about a week ago, because we were really close last year. So we had to evacuate. So we were unaffected, but it's always scary. But they did build a new access road out of the community, which we never had before. So we have two ways out now, which is a benefit. So thank you, West Kelowna, for that. We're definitely prepared. Got the safety things. We sure don't want to be caught where we were last year, for sure.
The question is where to go and how to get out, and how quickly. And I think we're safe on this side of the city, but with the way the winds are whipping up these days, it's scary for sure.
I have a Class 1 license and a pilot's license. And as far as preparing, I've put notices on the internet that if a wildfire happens and people are in trouble and they need a Class 1 driver to help evacuate or things like that, then I'm fully available as a driver, free of charge, volunteer, to do whatever I can to help.
Actually, I've got a small cottage up at Maple Lake, and we've been clearing the brush and making sure that everything's clear in our little plot of land there. And we always have a safety kit in our vehicle now too, so we're ready to go on a moment's notice.
Actually where we're from in Lethbridge, southern Alberta, there's a drought or potential for a drought, and we're not, other than waiting to see what happens and from instructions from the authorities, there's not much that we can do, right? So.
Yeah. So I'm actually from Nova Scotia, and we had those huge wildfires there that everybody's complaining about. So it's just like going with the bans with the use of fire or the little things in your backyard, and just following regulations and rules, because I've seen, we've all seen the detriment to it, and so many people lose so many things over one dumb mistake that's, controllable. So yeah, we were pretty sour about that.
Keep your windows closed. We have lots of plants in the house, and we live around a forest, so we get some air purification out of that, but not much else.
These days, with so much information available from so many sources, choosing which version of the mainstream media to get your news can sometimes be difficult. Some people choose social media, which can be misleading if they're unsure of the authenticity of their source. As part of CPAC's upcoming project focusing on disinformation and democracy both here in Canada and around the world, we took to the streets to ask people if they still have confidence in the customary forms of news gathering available to them. Our question:
do you trust the traditional news media, TV, radio, and in the newspapers for your news?
By and large, I think certain newspapers, certain television stations on the national level have their biases. What you hope is that they engage all points of view as opposed to just one. But I think there are some, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I listen to it, but I decipher what I think is the truth from it. Yeah, I don't go all in on what they say. I sort of decipher, and I watch different stuff. Do listen to some different YouTube news, so that's, you get different philosophies from different people.
You have to be discerning, and I do stick with, like I said, the tried and true, because they've been around. They're journalists, they're real, they try to do the right thing and go for the truth, as opposed to so much else that is out there and trying to lead you astray, as far as I'm concerned.
I trust it more than just someone's opinion. I think there's enough safeguards in our society and laws that keep traditional news media accountable. Of course, there's always going to be biases and things that have to be censored, but I think that they are our best option as it comes to what is reputable and what is not.
Do I trust the mainstream media? I look at everything with a fine-tooth comb that I see on TV. And then I decide how much of it is truth and how much of it is, once again, misinformation.
It's really important that you move ahead and that you are locating news and information from many different sources. And we want to be paying attention to our journalists, right? And who are the journalists that you're reading, and the information that you're receiving.
Not really. It's kind of hard, I find, in 2024. It's like technology so available and information so available, but it's not always good information. So I think things like TikTok and have become different types of, like, a source of information for current events. But again, what is real and what's not. So I think you kind of have to go back to the old school, like, newspaper style, I guess. But is that even correct? So it's just like a weird world we live in, where you have no choice but to put the trust into the higher power, I guess. But yeah, it's like you don't believe anything. Everything's like a conspiracy theory in its own. So believe what you want, I guess.
Absolutely not. 100% not. Because we're being manipulated and lied to on a daily basis, and all you have to do is look at what's going on in Gaza and watch things real time on YouTube, and then watch how it's covered to realize you're being lied to. So that's my stance on that.
I still do, yeah. You have to trust somebody, I guess, and I don't know, social media is kind of a scary spot too. But no, I trust the traditionals for now.
No, I never trust. I'm from Russia. I never trust news whatsoever.
Why not?
Because, there is a lot of information that is just, that want to lead you in a different in a certain direction, and they are very, they want to influence your minds, and, I don't watch news, and I don't believe them whatsoever.
I think it's ironic timing you should ask that of me, because I'm referring to the mainstream media as the propaganda machine. I take everything with a grain of suspect in terms of what slant they're delivering the news on. And so, no, I don't trust them at all.
Not entirely. I think with traditional news media, someone has an angle, and it seems like every other traditional media service sort of catches on to that angle, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of dissenting opinion. So I try to get news from various sources.
Yeah, I think I have a good relationship with news media, traditional news media. I'm a bit of a news junkie. I remember when I was a kid, there was this great show on the air that helped expose kids to journalism and media, which we could certainly use a lot more of these days. So yes, I am a person who has, I think, a lot of faith in traditional news media.
I think sometimes financial releases of news are a little bit more specific, and so in a way I feel some distrust because I don't know the angle and the slant at which this information is coming to me.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on CPAC. If you have any comments about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.